Hey, how's it going? And I'm excited to bring you this tutorial on how to create a pyroclastic type of explosion. It might be more like something you might see in space or something like that. I don't know. But I'm going to walk you through the steps, and by the time you're done, you should hopefully have something that kind of looks like this. And this was actually from a new tech scene file that I took the time to kind of deconstruct. So I'll try to go through this as quick as I can, but I'll try not to go too fast because I don't want to lose you or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear out this scene file and start from scratch. So it's kind of irritating if you look at the scene files because there's some things in there that you actually don't need. I thought you'd need everything that's in there, but actually you don't. So the first thing that we're going to do is set our frame to 50. And so we just come in the corner there and type 50. So let's get on the same frame rate as everybody else is on. So we'll just go 50. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a null object here. And we're going to just call this ref and go OK. All this thing does is drives the node editor because we're going to animate it right now. So right now it's at 0, 0, 0. And so what we're going to do is we got all keyframes, auto keyframe selected. We're just going to drag our playhead all the way to the end. And then on the Z position, we're just going to type in -1. If I drag the playhead back, you'll see that thing goes back and forth. And believe it or not, that's all that thing does. So just forget about it for now. It's just a driver for the node editor, one of the dimensions that we're going to be working on in a minute here. As far as lights go, we're not even going to worry about lights right now. We've got our light up here. You know, you think that's what I think of as the default position of the light. So like if I click on light here, it's actually not at 0, 0, 0. It's at -2, 2, -2. To be copacetic with this file, we're going to actually put it at the origin. So we're going to go 0, 0, 0, and now it's at the origin. But if you turn your scroll wheel, it's also not at the right orientation either. So we're going to put those at zeros too. So zero out your light. Make sure you're on the first keyframe when you do that. So now it's totally at 0, 0, 0, pointing straight. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and create the null. And this is really the whole thing. So we go null and we're going to call this volume and go okay, like that. So we can't really see anything because it's a null. We don't really need to see anything here on the screen like this right now. So let's just switch into VPR. And while we're in VPR, why don't we go to backdrop and just kill our gradient? So we're just staring at a black screen. It's kind of unnerving, right? Staring into nothingness. But while we're at it, why don't we just go to camera view 2? Okay, I think this is 640 by 480 view. This is where all the work really begins. There's a bunch of settings here. And again, I don't have them all memorized, so I do have to look at some notes along the way here. So, but there's something you got to pay attention to along the way. So, you know, you might as well go get some coffee or tea or a beer or something. Come back. Okay, here we go. So we're going to go into properties, make sure we're on volume here. And we're going to go to volumetric. And there we can finally start seeing something here. Now, I actually do have this. I've done this so many times. I actually do have some of these settings memorized. So scattering scale is 8, and absorption scale is 10, and texture density is 10. So you can just look at it as 8, 10, 10. Good idea to double check all your settings as you go along. So volume, sphere. Oh, this is step size is 20 millimeter. So we got 20 mm there. So volume sphere, 1 meter, 20 millimeter. Emission scale, we're going to be automating that. That's 8, 10, 0, 0, 10. Oh, this is very important. Set it to pyroclastic. So we got all that. 1, 8, 10, pyroclastic, and 10. And of course the dog's gonna start barking right now. Anyway, so now I'm going to change this color. This is one color that we do have to change. And I'm gonna look at my notes for this one. So this color here is 62. What I found out is that there's a one color setting on here when we set the gradient, and you actually have to set it exactly or you're going to not get a nice effect. It's really the only thing you really got to set the color precisely to, because normally I say play around with the colors, but you'll see when I get to it, I'll show you what it is. These colors I'm just following. These were the settings in the, I guess you could call it the recipe. Okay, we still don't see very much yet, but these settings are all correct. Now, volume, sphere, 121. I'm just double checking because I don't want to have to go back over this later. Okay, and then we're good. So now what we've got to do is we're going to come in here on here, and we got to go into this lovely graph editor that actually I don't really like it that much, but you can use it for a lot of things. So here we go. What we're going to do here is we're going to animate the volume emission scale. So we're going to click on a keyframe, and we're going to add a keyframe here, and that's 0. Did that add a keyframe? Yeah, okay, there we go. Add a keyframe there. And what you can do rather than fiddling with these, dragging this thing around, is you can just come down here with 0 frame, and we're just going to put in 10 right there. And that's all you got to do there. Then we're going to click on our keyframe here on the 25th and add a keyframe here. 25th frame, we're going to put our value there is 2. And that's good. And then we're going to come over here to the 50th frame, and we're going to add a keyframe. And we're going to make sure that that's exactly at 0. There we go. And then once we have our keyframes entered, we have 0, 25, and 50. Those are our frames. And that's 10, 2, and 0. I'm going to hit A on the keyboard. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Gosh darn it. Let me click here and just delete that. One good thing about this is actually delete. You can actually just delete it by hitting delete. And I meant to hit A on the keyboard, and then you can see our whole thing. Now, if I click on this first keyframe up here and adjust the tension, I can kind of smooth that out a little bit there, like that. And then if I come over to this last keyframe here, I'll make sure I'm at the 50th. I can also adjust the tension and flatten that out a little bit, like that. Just right even with the line. And then lastly, if I come here and click there, I can also flatten that out a little bit more. And I can flatten it out, can I? Yeah, but not going below the line, just like right there. So there we go. We got a nice little smooth change in our emission scale. And thank goodness we are done with the graph editor. And then you know something's going on there because it's lit up blue right there. Now for the super fun part, we get to go into the node editor, our friend the editor, node editor, and who doesn't like the node editor? There's some things we got to do here. So multiply is one scalar, so just double click there, it pops up. We're going to do gradient, so type in gradient, and there that is, so just double click that. Pile up on top of each other, so sometimes it gets confusing. The next one we want is length, and this is, remember when we moved our ref object, this is what's going to be driving that. Driving all of this right here. And then the last one is good old friend turbulence. I mean, is a day go by that you don't use turbulence? You know, I was going to say, you know, when in doubt, just put just add turbulence to it and call it a day. Okay, so here we're going to drag our object position into the vector. We got to have a result there, and a result there, and a result into input there. It's a daisy chain, right? And then our color goes into emission, and down here, well, since we're dragging everything, we can go ahead and put our alpha into our texture. And then this is where, if you're going to make a mistake on this thing, this is where your mistake will happen. And this is actually where I do have to check my notes, okay? Because this is where I got tripped up on this thing, and it was literally driving me insane. So here we go. We're on the first keyframe here, and what we're going to do is there's a very precise color that they recommend here, but that's not the main color yet that we got to worry about. So this one is 255, and then it's 181. I don't know how they came up with this color. So this color I actually think you could play around with, but not the next one, 098. Yep, so I don't know what color that is. It's like a tan. And then we want to make sure our alpha is set to 25,000. Like that, and enter, and that one. Now we're going to come down here. To me, this part doesn't have to be so precise, but just click right there. It's good to use these things because if you click anywhere on here, you create a keyframe. So once you get your keyframes set down, it's good to navigate just using these because it's so easy to accidentally create a keyframe. But anyway, we got the second one selected right now. Now this is where you've got to be precise because this I thought was black, but it is not black, and it makes a huge difference in how the cloud looks. So the color here is actually, I thought it was black. That was dumb of me to assume that. It's 017, 004. It makes a huge difference on the cloud, a night and day difference really. And 000, or just 0, I guess. So it's not black. Then we're going to add one more keyframe right about there. So one about maybe like a fifth or 1/6 of the way down, and then one about 3/4 of the way down. Now on this last keyframe, let me check my note here. That one is going to be 100% alpha, and this is actually black. So you can just choose black for that. You can see the other color. It's like a dark brown. And that's our gradient. This is really important to make the cloud kind of fade from orange to all the way through if you don't do that color. So I found that out the hard way, believe it or not. Okay, so we're done with that one. Then we're going to double click here on turbulence. And I got to check my notes on this as well. So up here on turbulence, we want to make these colors 200, 200, 200. So 200, 200, and 200, and go okay. And then what we're going to do is this is 0.65, and some of these numbers I don't know. I'm sure if you did 0.67 no one would notice. And then 12. Oops, and then I accidentally clicked out of it. So here we go. So we had black, and then 200, 200, 200. We've got 0.65, 0, 12, 100. Now this is important. You got to put that on reference for the reference object. And there's no other settings on here you got to mess with. That should all be correct there. Okay, so we should be done with that. And look, oh gosh, we've been so busy messing around. We're getting close to our effect. So right there, you know, that's almost it, except we just need it to change in size, right? You know, it seems like you can make things complicated, but it's really pretty simple if you think about it. You just want to go into, you don't even need, there's no point light needed for this, and the distant light is just needed for a little internal glow, afterglow. So you don't really need this thing, this fireball or whatever you want to call it, lights itself. And so you don't even really need any lights for this. It's basically its own self-lit object. I think pretty much the last step. So we're on the first frame here and we're on scale. And what we're going to do is just change that to, oh, and make sure auto keyframes is set. I'm going to change it to 0, 0, 0. And of course there's nothing there. Then we're going to drag this to about the 10th keyframe. If you want to get wild, you can drag it to the 11th. I'm just joking. Here you can type in 1, 1, and 1. And then we should be able to drag this all the way to the end and change this to 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5. And that's largely the whole thing there. Now I'm noticing here that I'm not getting the full effect that I was talking about earlier. So let me see how the cloud is still dark, but this should actually be orange. So let me double check something here real fast. I'm going to go into my light properties. I don't think this is actually affecting anything, but this should be 1000. This, I think it should be 8. And let me check one more thing here on my notes. We go to lights. So many little settings. Actually, this should be 4, our light samples, and this should be 8. And then our light is right at the center. But you see how this isn't lighting up the whole ball? It just, you see that thing come in, but it's not lighting it up. So let's go back and see where we might have made a mistake. See, even right there, this whole thing should be orange, but you only see the ball is orange. So what I'm going to do is I got to go back and see if I made a misstep somewhere. Okay, so this is all looks correct to me. I don't see anything. If we go into the nodal editor, this is all looks correct. What's interesting is if you play around with this, you should be able to play around with this and see. Oh, I accidentally added a keyframe. Darn it. This should delete it. Okay, so I want to be on this keyframe. Hold on. You got to click right on the keyframe. So I'm suspecting this is where my problem is. So let me see here. I think we should have set this to linear. And let's see, go to the next keyframe, and it should set this to linear. and go to next keyframe, and this one actually should be Bezier. Look what that did. Did you see that? Okay, so that was the problem. Okay, so now I can play around with this. You can see as I move this, this is what's really controlling the the internal looking part of it. And then if you play around with this, this is what's controlling like the outer shell, how much of the outer shell is lit up. If I'm following my example right, let me double check. So that was my mistake by not setting the smoothing here on the, so let me go to first previous keyframe. So that one's linear, the next one is linear, and the last one is Bezier. So that was again a mistake I made from not being careful. But I do recommend using these to navigate here. This is what really is controlling the appearance of your fireball. So you can play around with these settings. I don't think it has to be that precise. I just think whatever you think looks good. I'm not going to give you an exact number of where to put those. So that's what really is controlling everything, okay? And then as far as I know, in the scene file that I saw, if we go to light, they did have the light rotate. So like here, we know our lights. If I want to follow the scene file 100% accurate, we could drag this to the 20th keyframe, and then on rotation for the light, this was actually, we're on the light, right? 40, and this was 8. And that's following grandma's recipe exactly right. Okay, so now that's it. So if I walk through this slowly, it looks right. It looks right. Looks kind of like the sun, right? And then I guess it goes boom right there or something. And then it kind of covers itself. And then you end up with something that looks pretty cool like that. But when you're doing it right, the whole ball kind of, the whole smoke cloud kind of glows a little bit. And then it kind of just closes up on itself and goes dark like that. Thanks for sticking along with this video. I hope you found this helpful. I enjoy making these explosions, but they can be a little frustrating. It's real easy to miss a step here and there. So I hope you don't mind it when I make a little mistake and have to go back and fix it. But that's real life. So but the more and more you do it, the less mistakes you get, the less mistakes you'll make, and you'll get better and better at doing this. So if you have a recipe for a volumetric explosion, please feel free to share it. I really super appreciate it. So thanks so much. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.